2-3 more minutes, my mother has gone up to talk to the neighbors about the drilling machine. I mean, that is a pretty serious issue.
Yeah, that might not be great for the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, guys, we are live. So let's get started. Pranav Sharma here has a power cut, so we'll have to make do with his candlelight. But other than that, let's get started. So, first of all, I'm Sitara Srinivasan, and I have a background in engineering, but I'm very passionate about astrophysics. I'm currently pursuing a project called Kritika Sama Project. I'm also the founder of Naxxatra Sciences, which is an organization to connect researchers, undergraduate and graduate students to mentors. And the whole motive is to kind of break down the boundaries and give access to people and access to students to high quality education. So we'll come back perhaps and speak a little bit more about Naxxatra at the end of this talk. So we also have Karthik here. Would you like to introduce yourself, Karthik?
Hi. So I am a student, and I work with education. I work with a lot of schools in central India, around 140 schools, with a company called University. And I also have a background in astronomy. I'm particularly interested in trajectory designs and orbital maneuvers. And yeah, I'm also I'd like to think I'm a close friend of Pranav now as well.
Okay, so really happy to have Karthik
Yes, you
here.
are, Karthik.
And finally, we
Oh, I
have
thought you were my
the
close
man
friend.
of the hour, Pranav
Hi,
here.
guys.
So yeah,
I'm
Pranav
sorry
Sharma
I'm
is
giving this interview from a bunker. I'm really sorry. So I've been kidnapped by lack of electricity and I'm giving an interview here.
yeah.
Let's see.
Okay. So Pranav is a
All
pretty
right.
multi-dimensional person. So let's take a couple of minutes to introduce him. He was at the BM Birla Science Center, which is where Karthik and I met him, and he curated the Science Museum as well as the Space Museum. He's also the brain behind the AstroWin series of winter schools that are conducted at the BM Birla Science Center. It's a great, unique program which brings together students from around the globe and extremely good quality training in astrophysics over the period of a week, and an excellent panel of professors. So he's the brain behind AstroWin. He's also a science communicator. He has a very interesting, unique approach to science. He has given talks such as The Science of Interstellar, The Poetry of Science, which are some of the domains that he's very interested in. So I think we'll get to know him more as we go on with our questions today. So before we dive into anything too serious, I would just like to ask you how you've been and how's quarantine been? What kind of experiences have you had in the last few months?
Oh, I think I've been all right in quarantine because primarily because I was reading and writing most of the time. And yeah, and I was really happy until, yeah, lack of electricity today. I can't handle heat. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think that's been a problem in several parts of India right now. So, what are you working on exactly? You said you were writing something. What are you working on?
So I'm working on this popular science book on neutrinos because we are coming up with this Indian neutrino observatory. So I thought it'd be a good idea to trace the history of neutron physics and come back a little, and then it's good to identify the key players and talk about a little history and the site itself, and people like Pauly who very doubtful of their own theory. So I thought it'd be a good idea, especially in the time when we are coming up with the Indian Nuclear Observatory.
That's great. So, what about reading? What kind of reading have you done? I know that you read a lot. So, any specific books you've recently read?
So I've been reading some very interesting poets of late. I mean, of course, I've read them before, but I thought it'd be a good idea to revisit them. For example, I was reading Nazim Hikmet more than ever. Then I read Pablo Neruda, and Faiz Ahmed Faiz has been my all-time favorite. Then there's a book which I read recently, which was sent to me by my sister. So we have this way of what's the right word? Yeah, harassing each other. So that's what siblings do. Yeah, so she sent me a book. I mean, of course, the book was very good, but yeah, and that's called Regarding the Pain of Others. It's an interesting read. Then I was reading a lot of psychology off late because me and Karthik were drafting this policy for International Planetarian Society, and Karthik is helping me out. So the idea was to understand how global science communication works, and then I thought it would be a good idea to understand the psychology of writing, the psychology, primarily child psychology.
Okay. It would be interesting to visit this particular topic since both of you are working on it. So, a couple of ideas that go into that, perhaps it would be interesting to visit that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, let's do that. And so, I thought we would ask, start with a bunch of practical questions because clearly things have gotten very crazy over the last few months. A lot of things have changed. And since Pranav is someone who is very socially aware, especially in the domain of education, I thought we would start there. So, what kind of impact do you think the pandemic has had and will have for education at the higher undergraduate or the graduate level?
So is there a possibility that I can log out for 2 minutes and I log in from another device because my laptop's battery will die in about 15 minutes.
No problem. I
So I,
will speak
yeah,
to Karthik meanwhile.
yeah,
Yeah,
I just
no
join you guys.
issues. Sure, sure.
And I'll also just walk out and then because heat is killing me.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. I think sunlight would be better
Yeah,
anyway as a social.
yeah, I'll
Yeah,
just
let's
give
do
me a
that.
sec.
Hi, Karthik.
Hi, big responsibility, huh? Filling Pranav's gap.
Yeah, you hopefully fill his shoes. So, tell me about the recent project you're doing. I think you were working on astrodynamics. So, what is it about?
Yeah, so I'm working with ISRO Space Application Center with a professor from IIT Indore, and it's basically about modeling and understanding multipath error in navigation satellites. So what happens is these navigation satellites, their signals which are supposed to identify a location, they get reflected and bounced off of objects like satellite dishes and car roofs and stuff like that, and that creates a lot of noise which is kind of hard to identify. So I'm working with them to improve our Navic satellites accuracy. It's been fun. It's good, having fun. um,
Wow. That's nice. So that seems to have a bit more of like signal processing and engineering techniques involved, right? Like, what is your modeling usually? What is the dealing with?
e- okay, yeah, I think I'm not sure whether how technical I'm supposed to go, but yeah, it has a lot of signal processing as well. But
Okay.
it's mainly about like solving the mathematics of GPS satellites fundamentally. Like
Okay.
what equations does a satellite receiver solve, and what can you add in that to figure out what is the useful signal and what is not. And besides that, I mean, there are multiple dimensions in that, like GPS, the American navigation satellites, they have like a particular signal. They have a noise that is intentionally introduced by the Department of Defense, because that level of accuracy isn't available for civilian purposes, but we do not have that in navic satellites.
Oh,
So yeah, so we've been trying to improve those. And I don't I mean, a lot of people think that GPS is good enough and our navigation is good enough right now, and I completely agree with them in these things. I don't think like in our personal lives it would have much of an impact if we bring down navigation satellite accuracy to 1 centimeter or half a meter or something like that. But it's going to be really useful in terms of massive measurements and larger scale science projects. So yeah, I think we have Pranav back now.
yeah. Actually, if his audio is fine, I think that would be sufficient as well, uh, since he has a power cut. Pranav, can you hear us?
Okay, he has left again.
That's okay. Okay, let's continue the conversation. So,
Yeah.
yeah, what do you think has been happening with the pandemic scenario and with so many students having to make very important decisions at this point because they're like at the crossroads of their career? and because of the lockdown and the restrictions placed, okay, you're back.
Oh, hi.
Okay, you're
This
outside. This is better. Yes,
is much better, right? Good.
yes, it's better.
Nice, nice. All right. So you're talking about what?
Talking about how somebody has a guest. Okay, okay. We were talking about how the pandemic is kind of affecting very crucial decisions that students have to make right now
Hmm.
regarding their education. And
Mm-hmm.
if you had some insight about that, or what you think will be the effect of it.
Well, I mean, along the history of the civilization, and I believe it's been a trend for a really long time, that civilizations, what's the right word, change their own track when
Mhm.
something like this hits. And I think student communities is this one certainly one community which gets the huge hit out of it. But that also changes the way we look at the curriculum. For example, now it has become all the more important to establish, say, departments like pandemic studies, right? So that will give more opportunities. And the major thing that one is facing right now is, well, I'm missing the classroom. I'm not very sure about other people, but I certainly do miss the classroom. And in that sense, new technologies and will emerge, and we'll find new ways to learn. But that doesn't stop education, does it?
Yeah, definitely not. So education, I think, will continue, and but one more connected question is because of the economic toll that finance will definitely take a hit.
Hmm.
So the amount of funding that science gets will also take a hit. So do you think in the domain of academia, a lot of things will change from now on?
Of course they will, and they should. I mean, it's like this. If you want to fund, say, pandemic departments, you need to cut short fundings from someplace else. And that will certainly, I mean, you have to be very dynamic when it comes to funding. And you have to be very dynamic when it comes to curriculums. So I think the academic community has been able to manage things off late. And I think they will be able to manage things in one way or the other.
Cool. So now, as I mentioned before, you have an active interest in art and the
Hmm.
subtler aspects of science. So I think I'll hand it
Hmm.
over to Karthik so he can ask you some questions regarding that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something which I actually thought that he would be the perfect person to discuss with. And
Hmm.
in my opinion, art has played an important role in inspiring and in the advancement of sciences.
Hmm.
From scientists actually involving themselves in creating art to scientists who just consume art in one form or the other. Like
Hmm.
no one can deny like people like Clark or Wells or
Hmm.
Asimov would have had a huge influence in the technologies that we use today.
Hmm.
So I wanted to ask you, in the modern STEM education,
Hmm.
at least in the Indian subcontext, we do not really see an active dynamic between arts and sciences. So like,
Hmm.
what do you think? How much of an importance does art play in science education and science research? And
Hmm.
like, if you had to make a policy level decision
Hmm.
to change the
Hmm.
dynamic, then what
Hmm.
would that be?
All right. So I think there are a couple of things that we need to talk about before I answer this question. One is this D.S. Kothari report of 1965, which actually talked about bringing disciplines close. And then Yashpal became the chairman of the university's Grand Commission in the late 80s. And Professor M.G.K. Menon was Minister of Science in V.P. Singh's government. These inter-university centers was established, and Center for Excellences was established. The only inter-university center which got a really good reputation and doing wonderful work is IUCA, Inter-University Center for
Mhm.
Astronomy and Astrophysics. There's one accelerator center in New Delhi, but
Yeah.
it's fine. It's all right. I mean, it doesn't have much of a. I mean, we cannot compare IUCA's reputation with that at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, so that is one thing. And in 2008 Yashpal report, Yashpal actually talked about dissolving the walls of disciplines and including several disciplines and doing things together and all that. Now, so that is one thing which academics really want to do. Now we come to how the society understands it. Okay. So Indian society for a really long time, and let's just forget about what kind of influences that we've had, both historically and otherwise. We've been a very strong patriarch society, right? Which which is erected on the on the notion of heteronormativity. You remember, right? We had this discussion, Karthik,
Yeah.
right? And anything which challenges the norm, one, which is porous, two, which allows development on the level where it challenges the fact how the society has been, it scares them. For example, if I were to offer, say, a course on physics with music, the the professors from the music department and the physics department will call me names, right? But in the West, we've been able to do so because there is some porosity there, and they allow healthy osmosis. But here, because we find the meaning of, or we wrongfully assume meaning in the hegemony that we've created for ourselves, that has been the biggest hurdle in what is the right in interdisciplinary studies. Right? Of course, I mean universities like Ashoka are doing it. There's some part of JNU which does the same thing, but not much. Not a prevalent way of thinking or understanding arts and sciences. But I am a very strong believer that arts and sciences can really work together. I can give you an illustrated example for this. You remember Newton's laws, right? Right. So what's what Newton's first law?
Inertia.
Right. So tell me the statement.
A body at rest or uniform motion would tends to stay at rest or in uniform motion unless acted upon by an external force.
Good. So can we say that any object, rather any object, will not change its state, whether of rest or motion, until and unless there's an external force acting on it?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Uh, Take example of any revolution in the history.
Yeah.
Right? Any object will not change its state until and unless there's an external force acting on it. We are talking pure political science here, right? So once the states start suppressing the class divide or a certain strata, then they start moving. Then there's certain momentum which starts building because there's a force which is acting on them specifically. Because we understand that force one has a magnitude and has a direction, right?
Yeah.
What's the second law?
The change in a body's momentum is directly proportional to the force acting on it.
Good. So when an idea gets momentum, it gets momentum by the virtue of how many people believe in that idea and how fast the idea is propagated. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. And what's the third law?
Every
Um,
force has a equal and opposite reaction.
And we're talking pure political science here, aren't we?
yeah.
So that's the thing.
Yeah.
One should understand that human ideas are same, or we can, take a safer word there, similar
Yeah.
in its essence, but applied in different contexts. We were just talking about how Newton's laws define motion, and
Yeah.
we took that same law can be applied to the theory of revolution,
Yeah.
right? And Butler's performativity of gender can be used to understand the indeterministic nature of quantum mechanics,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Fair. I think. I mean, at what level do you think the distinction should blur out? In the sense that at this stage in our scientific advancement, the requirement of specialization is of, I mean, its importance is paramount because there is no other way to develop sciences other than having specialization in certain fields, and that's what we see in our PhDs and postdoctorates and stuff like that. But till what level do you think that there should be an active intervention of the state and of the policy in making sure that students are exposed to arts? I mean, like we have specializations starting from 11th grade and in high school. So what exactly, at what level do you think that even in college and undergraduate education should we have a certain section for arts?
See, Karthik, I am a firm believer in the individual. And I have this belief that the society doesn't like change, right?
Yeah.
And the individuals can change. So, let's just address the issue of specifics and how narrow we are going in understanding research. Fine. I mean, there's certain importance given to the fact that we need to identify a narrow problem and try to solve it. Fine. But my concern here is, why are you trying to put cart before the bull? We specify the problem statement, and all we are trying to do is finish the PhD.
Yeah.
We're not understanding how the phenomena works. We are just trying to prove whatever we believe in. And if it contradicts, we do something else, and then we do some here and there. We just try to pacify it and finish off with the PhD. And that is done because there's a certain economics about it. There are fiscal factors involved, and then you need to get a job and all that. Now, talking about how much policy intervention is required, too much. We need to redraft on how research funding needs to be done, how much you need to have intervention in understanding multiple disciplines together. I don't know if you remember, but there was this time when we were in school and biotechnology was a very new field.
Yeah.
It was criticized upon. And there were debates about it, that it's useless, and why don't we, why burning money on it? Now we have a
Yeah.
separate state department funding biotechnology only. So bureaucrats take time to understand, and society takes time to understand. The idea is to start. If you want to dissolve the boundaries, do it. Like, the thing is, now we want revolution in society, but we want others to take charge. If you want to dissolve boundaries, do it. Be my guest. But if you want, change on a very large scale, the only thing that you can do right now is to talk about the ideas. And I think that has been the only way that societies have accepted or understood the ideas. Be it Marxism, be it capitalism, be it utilitarianism, be it pacifism, be it liberalism. You need to sit down and talk it out. For example, if we want to understand how science and art works, so whenever you're delivering a talk, you start delivering the talk in the sense that you bring the ideas together. But then there is a downside to it. We are afraid to do so because we are dealing in specifics. But if you're not able to understand phenomena to a level that you're able to correlate, my question is, do it really understand the phenomena?
Yeah, I totally agree with you over those things. Um, so this is a slightly different topic, but I wanted to ask you. There, we've been seeing this trend, or I have felt that I was observing this thing, that the interest in science as of now in space exploration comes from this very twisted sense of national pride. Like India did that. It doesn't matter that we're, as a collective civilization, we're adding on to the body of knowledge, which may help in developing our quality of lives. But it's more about India did this, India did that, or USA did this, launch America. So, do you think this is healthy? The scientific exploration being driven by this sense of national pride,
See,
and how
I mean,
sustainable is it?
if it may sound like a controversial statement, but trust me, it is not. If the national sentiment is getting funding to space exploration, so be it. But the idea is to fund space exploration, to fund space research, and get things done. And I find it interesting that people are able to relate, even if not understand space research, but it's fine. It gives a little momentum and it puts government under pressure. So, because they want the Department of Space to perform. And if they want the Department of Space to perform, they have to fund, because there is a certain reputation which is related, entangled there. So it's good, I mean, if the national sentiment is helping the scientists, then why not? But I would certainly go on record and say this, that science has always been neutral, and it will be neutral, and it will remain neutral. Of course, there will be individuals and maybe individual organizations who will try and put state-sponsored propaganda on it. But that does not define how scientific community works. That doesn't define how science works. I mean, Heisenberg was believed to support the Nazis. Was he doing that? And we don't know as a fact. But we respect Heisenberg for the person who he was. And of course, all of us have political inclinations. If I say that I'm a liberal and you are a liberal, then that is a political statement, isn't it? Right? And when we are teaching science in the most liberal way possible. So that conduct is also political. Then I don't think that we have any right to, criticize the person who's using his nationalistic identity to teach science. That's his way. But there is a certain, as long as it's not getting violent, as long as it's not harming the cause, it's fine.
So while we are still in the conversation about education, I have one important question that's been surfacing recently in the last few years, and you'll see a lot about this. And this is basically the transfer or people switching their career from academia to industry, right? And it's happening at maybe early stages or even well into the field. People finish 9, 8 years of being in research, and then they switch their careers entirely. So there is often the question of why they do it, and secondly, the fact that they're not able to convert their idea. Let's say you come up with a PhD thesis, but they don't feel like it's actually getting transformed into a product or something available in the industry. So they are finding a huge gap between what they wanted to do and their vision, maybe say with cancer research, for example, and what is transferable to industry. And it's growing wider and not closer, research and industry. So what is your insight about that? And there is this pressure within academia about publication of theoretical papers that often overwhelm what is good for science. Like there are conversations about, hey, this is publication worthy, this is journal worthy, and that idea actually is carried forward more enthusiastically than, hey, this is great for science, this is great for a new invention, this is a good solution. So that's happening in academia a lot, and because of that, a lot of good people are leaving research and going into industry because they're not able to execute on their ideas. So what do you think?
I think when I say that I believe in the individual, I certainly do. And when I say what I mean is, if individuals are not able to take charge of their own life, so be it. The thing is, I mean, we do sciences because most of the time we think it is cool, right? And most of the researchers are there because they got funding to do it. They got scholarship and all that. If you sit down and have real philosophical discussion on their ideas, most of these ideas fall flat on ground because the only thing that they've been doing is putting mathematics on it and computation. So I think they are putting themselves in a position where they are destined to fail, and so be it. Why not? See, you did physics, for example. Somebody did physics, random person, got into TIFR, went to Cambridge and all that, because he got funding and all the support that's needed. And in the end, if he's going in let's say, banking sector, and that simply says that he was incompetent. He was absolutely incompetent. He just did because he was able to find ways to do it.
But what about the failure of ideas turning into solutions in the society? Why is that not happening? Why are there no conversations between industry and research as much as there should be? I'm sure there is, and I think
there are a lot of
around the globe there is.
Industry works based on the market and market needs, and research is partially dependent on the market, not totally dependent on the market. But here's the thing. I mean, if somebody is working, say, on gravitational waves, market is not going to get benefit out of it directly, but certainly the technologies that we would develop during the course of doing the research will help the society. For example, when particle physicists wanted to talk to each other, they created something called the World Wide Web, and all thanks to that, we are able to talk right now. That's an indirect contribution, which is a huge contribution, but it's an indirect contribution. You don't see the fruits of it in the very first day. But industry works in a very strong economic manner. And if I have a startup, if I'm not able to pull out, say, 1.5 crore turnover over a year's time, then it doesn't matter what kind of research I put in. It doesn't. Industries like the Tatas and Wipro and all that, they have specific research department, they support research and all that. But they're only able to do so because they have spare money.
Yeah.
And they can put all of that money in bringing new ideas together. But if you identify, there's a huge strata, which are small and medium enterprise industries, right? And if you expect them to support theoretical research, right? And because research takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of money, I think it is, it's not right to expect that from them.
Okay, and what do you think about the fact that people leave research because they're underpaid for what they do, and the whole fact that scientists are not, very well off financially when compared to other career options? So,
I mean, excellence has a price, and if you are brilliant, you get paid. And if you're brilliant and if you're not getting paid from your own academic institutions, you know how to earn money. And two, if you're doing sciences to earn money, then certainly you're not in the right field. You should go to Vegas and count cards.
yeah, Karthik, over to you.
I think I disagree with the statement that ideas are not being converted into industrial technology, because I just feel like the pace at which this happens is very slow for humans to comprehend.
That's what I said.
In
It's
its
an
entire
indirect
world.
contribution. It's an indirect contribution. You don't see the
Yeah,
fruits of World Wide Web in the 80s, but in the
yeah.
2010s and now 2020, it's an essential part of life.
In fact, one of my favorite examples of this entire um, to illustrate this point is this story of about Galileo. So there's the story. It's hard to verify now, but it's said that Galileo was sitting in this church. He was made to sit in that church, and this one person who used to work in that church, it was evening, it was getting dark. This one person had this huge rod with a hook at its end. He pulled one of the lanterns hanging from the ceiling towards him, lit the candles in the lantern, and then left the lantern. And Galileo noticed that the lantern started swinging. And now it's important to appreciate the thousands and thousands of lanterns that would have been lit over the history of human civilization. But Galileo noticed this one thing, that the amount of time that it takes for the lantern to swing a huge amplitude is also equal to the amount of time that it takes the lantern to swing a smaller amplitude. And that's the basic fundamental of pendulums. And if you think about it, the people of that time would have never guessed that this discovery, I mean, now we know that pendulums have helped in figuring out the acceleration due to gravity, and acceleration due to gravity have helped us figure out how to send rockets into space. And this entire development would have been incomprehensible to the people who lived along with Galileo, that a lantern hanging from a church ceiling would help us send satellites in space that can accurately position our navy fleets. So I think I, I feel like the purpose of science is not to find purpose in science. The purpose of science is to
And
do
I
science.
think, Karthik, when we talk about paradigm shift, right? When we talk about paradigm shift, we put that paradigm shift in a perspective that we want the paradigm shift to be overnight, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
paradigm shifts happen over here and they change society drastically. I
yeah,
mean, we were able to wrap our head around the general theory of relativity only after, say, until after Einstein died, primarily.
yeah,
That is where the huge amount of work on GR started. And now we are harnessing the fruits of GR when we have the gravitational wave laboratories set up and all the satellite communication and everything. And it is a huge paradigm shift, but it happened over a century.
Yeah.
We have a
Um,
question from one of the viewers on YouTube. So he asks about studying abroad during the COVID-19 time in perhaps Europe or US. And he also wants you to talk about pseudoscience being propagated as science in India.
Studying abroad during pandemic times, I think we all know the answer to it, don't we? We do, right? I mean, it's certainly not advisable.
yeah, it's crazy because a year back from now, when I was deciding where I have to be to study physics, I was most likely going to be in America, and it was a last minute decision to stay back. And now that I think about it, it would have been so crazy to be stuck
They,
there. Um, but I feel like the most important thing to understand um, is this, is the lack of is the sheer lack of compassion amongst people at this stage. Like all we need right now is people acknowledging the fact that others need their help, and that's what we're lacking right now. Uh, can you hear me? I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
sure.
I can hear you. I
Yeah,
can hear you. But I think Pranav's video is stuck. He might have to rejoin again, perhaps, if he can hear us.
yeah. I think Pranav did not touch upon the question of
I can.
pseudoscience, so
Yeah.
I'll talk about it until he joins again. I think what distinguishes science from pseudoscience is the method with which it is conducted, and in my personal opinion, it's a very clear distinction. So, I mean, the way sciences have worked for centuries now is, okay, this is a statement that you believe in. What will it take for me to disprove that statement and for you to change your opinion? And then if you
yeah,
tell me that,
Yeah, we can hear
yeah,
you.
yeah. So I was saying, so the way it has worked for centuries is by having faith in the scientific method. And that's what asking you that what will it take for me to disprove your idea, and then trying my best to gather evidence that you cannot explain. And if your idea cannot explain that evidence, then either you have to accept that your idea is incomplete or you have to discard that idea. And
What
but
about people who claim that certain, whatever is considered pseudoscience now, actually is scientific, but we are unable to prove it currently? And
yeah,
these are,
so to disprove a claim, it is important to have this thing called a falsifiable claim, and that's basically what sciences are based on. We have claims that can be falsified. Now if you tell me that there's a monster living between earth and moon, and I ask you, okay, I'm able to look at the moon, then you'll tell me that, okay, the monster is invisible, and I'd be like, okay, would there be some sort of gravitational influence? And then you'll tell me that no, the matter does not interact with the gravitational field. And you can keep doing that. So the importance is the important idea is that to do science, you need to have a falsifiable claim. And people think that, okay, we have claims about black holes and neutrinos and all these things that we cannot directly observe, but still we have claims that are falsifiable. So we do not say that there are these things that we have absolutely no idea how to study, or we have absolutely no way how to disprove this theory. But if and I believe that most of pseudoscience is based on these things, like astrology, which is definitely a pseudoscience. They'll tell me that, okay, according to my zodiac sign, I should have a good day. And then if I ask them that, okay, I did not have a good day, then we can discuss the definition of what a good day is for hours and hours without reaching a conclusion. That's not exactly a falsifiable claim. So there's that. We were
Pranav,
talking
what
about
is your
pseudoscience.
opinion on
Yeah.
pseudoscience?
on my opinion in pseudoscience, if pseudoscience gives somebody happiness, let them have it. If somebody gets happy and if their belief gives them happiness, let them have it, because there is no way that you can convince them otherwise. For people who believe strongly in God, you cannot sit down and, as Karthik said, put a falsifiable claim, right? And there are several arguments against God. If somebody believes in God, let him be happy with that. Of
But
course, science, of course, the society needs a very strong scientific outlook. So that is the birth of absurdity, isn't it? That there's something that should be, and there's something that which is right now, and there's a huge disparity between it. The only thing that you can do is to slowly push the idea, and then make other people understand that this is another perspective of thinking. The thing that we do when we talk about pseudosciences, we take all our logical acumen in trying to disprove them. You don't have to do that. If you explain to somebody who believes that 2 plus 2 is equal to 5, and if you make him understand and prove 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, you don't have to put your effort in telling him that it can't be 5. Because once you understand logic, you cannot defy it.
So yes, and I think if it has a social impact, there is much more incentive to try to educate people about it, like rather than it being an individual belief. If it ends up having a impact on a larger scale, then it is something that must be fought for.
Yeah.
So
Karthik, can you just sit somewhere?
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm going to mute him now. So Karthik, unmute yourself when you have to talk, okay? Because your microphone is like,
Karthik,
yeah,
you need to sit somewhere, please.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have another question from
Hmm.
Ashish, and he asks, which is a better approach for propagating science to the masses, bottom up or top to bottom? How you want to perceive the question?
Well, what do we mean by top to bottom or
I
bottom to
think
top?
interpretation of the question would be, does it make sense
Policy
for,
framework or just going to the classes and teaching them, right?
yeah, something like that,
I
starting
think
up
both.
from the childhood level?
No, what I personally believe is that you have to intervene on several levels at the same time. For example, if you are supporting school education, you have to make sure that the Minister of School Education understands how things work, right? So you have to intervene in policy framework at the same time you start working on with the school. So there is no top to bottom or bottom to top approach. You have to intervene on every level possible if you really want to get something done.
Cool. So last question regarding education would be, there are these top tier one and tier two universities in India, let's
Hmm.
say the top 5%,
Hmm.
whose way of educating the students is
Hmm.
dramatically different from the other 95%. And that
Hmm.
gap is a lot, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Don't you think the same standard, there should be a very strong attempt to bring the same standard to the other 95%, or have
Hmm.
some way to bridge it? And don't you think that's a problem, because it's a huge polarity in the kind of students or the kind of education you're giving them? On one hand, you have like world class research, and on the other hand, the undergraduate students pay and buy their final year thesis projects because they don't want to make it on their own.
And
So
again, I would like to answer this by saying that I believe in the individual. If they don't want to take charge, they can't. And even in the top 5% universities, it's the same thing that's happening in the rest of it. I mean, if you can take a classic case of, say Lucknow University versus IIT Kanpur, it's the same people almost, right? And it's the same kind of work that they're doing. Somebody is putting a lot of effort in it, somebody is not. Because it's individual approach. It's an individual endeavor. I've been saying from the very first instance that I believe in individual endeavor. And if people don't want to take charge, they won't. Right? Even if like it's somebody sitting in Harvard, assume, and if they're not working, nobody is forcing them to, right? They're doing it because they want to. Right?
that makes
And there are
sense, I
people,
think.
who are like tier 2, tier 3 colleges, brilliant people, and they're doing good work.
Exactly.
Right? So it's all about individual endeavor, whether if you want to do it or you don't want to do it. And the polarity will remain, and that's how it is. It will certainly remain because of the fact that people take things lightly, and there are people who don't take things lightly, and there are people who want to put their 100% in doing something. Then there are people who just want to take their salary, go home, and drink and die. Right? And there's a polarity between because of individual. I don't think because people don't want to change curriculums. Why are these big universities progressing more than the other ones? Because they change curriculum every time. Now, if there's a professor who doesn't want to change curriculum for 10 years, and they're teaching microprocessor in a class where the student should be learning about artificial intelligence. Students cannot make their curriculum, right? Teachers can. And if somebody is not taking charge to do that, then it's sad. And I express that it's sad, but we can't do anything about it. And the only thing that one should strive to do, for example, me and you, if we are able to provide parallel opportunities like we did during the winter school, and we know there's a huge disparity between astronomy education, the formal astronomy education,
Yeah.
and people who really want to do astronomy and are not in astronomy institutions. So we thought, all right, there's a gap. If we can do something about it, let's do this. So we bring top astronomers from India and abroad, and you know how winter schools are, right? It is not
So,
the
yeah.
classic education that you go through. It is very porous. You can sit down, and we are chatting, we are discussing, we are laughing, and then there are parties in my house, which is the best part of the winter school.
Yeah, surprisingly. And I think those kinds of experiences are like so different for these students because their usual rote education doesn't offer that.
Yeah, even this year when Unni was here at my place, Unni Krishnan, and so was Stephanos. Stephanos was there, right?
Stephanos was there. Yeah.
Stephanos, Unni, me, Kostov was there, right? Kostov was there, Kaushal was there. So you have wonderful, like, 3 astronomers, 1 theoretical physicist, and the other person is poet. What were we discussing about? Life in general. So that kind of exposure actually brings new ideas, and this is something which should be done, and people should take individual charge. I think that is something which I firmly believe.
Yeah, I think that closely resonates with what we're doing in Naxxatra as well. So thanks for bringing that out. Karthik, any other questions before we move on to slightly more eccentric things for the last part of the talk?
Yeah, there's this one more thing which I wanted to ask Pranav, his opinions on this thing. So I mean, we've been noticing this thing that at least I feel like science has also a lot to do with authority in the modern context, because now we present claims that cannot be tested by normal people. Like if 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 I want, I mean, if I want to understand the nature of space-time continuum, then I just have to believe whatever is being published in journals, because I cannot conduct an experiment of that scale on my own. And as you said, that there's a lot of economics and finance and funding and politics that goes behind what is published in journals. Like, I mean, if string theory is proven wrong, it would take at least 10 years for people to accept that string theory is wrong, or perhaps even longer. So what do you think? Like, is there a way to combat this sense of authority? Because at this point of time, there is nothing inherently different between science and religion at this point. If all science that I get is from reading journals, because it's either scriptures
But
or
then that's
science, and I'm just
verifiable, right? It's verifiable.
not at my
It's
scale.
verifiable and falsifiable. Not a small
But
scale, of course.
yeah, not at my scale. So I have to believe what is being published about
No,
gravitational waves.
that is the beauty of sciences, isn't it? You can like sit down and do tensors and try to understand what this theory stands true. If it doesn't, you can actually go out and claim, and then you will participate in debate, and then can I mean, tomorrow if you like sit down and find flaws in general relativity, nobody is stopping you, right? And go, and if you prove it, then you're the next Einstein.
But he has a point, a subtler point perhaps. If you look at cosmology, the standard model of cosmology is extremely popular. And any undergrad student who's about to begin his research career would pick standard model and not like Mond or like Milgromian dynamics, right? Which are alternate theories of gravity. So that in what he was saying is in some sense like religion, because the most popular theory, there is a snowball effect because most people will pick up that theory and work on it and produce more results trying
No,
to
there are people who are
So-
doing parallel and unique different work. But yeah, I mean, Karthik's point is right. There is a certain power that science derives out of the authority that they can prove or disprove anything, right? And I think that is because humans are involved in it, aren't they? They find ways to derive power. They find ways to derive authority. It's a human thing. It's not an outlook thing. It's a human thing.
Yeah.
And it's like this. If you want to talk about, say, you know, gravitational waves, you have to do precise instrumentation and precise experiments, which require a lot of money. And if you have that, please do it. I mean, people like Newton, they were doing most of his work from their own fundings. Right? Rich people.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's go over to some subtler topics. Karthik wrote a story recently, which I was reading, and it has a pretty, I guess, nihilistic ending. But of course,
Karthik, are you reading Nietzsche again?
No,
I
no.
asked you not to, all right?
so he explores this thing that maybe if the creators of this universe left a certain message for us in some form, and we finally decode it 16 billion years from now, what would that message be? So, Karthik, any questions or comments about theories such as the simulation theory or the fact that we might be under a certain law created by someone else?
I did not write that story as a means of promoting the. I mean, I do not believe that this is a simulation, and I think that that at some level is an unfalsifiable claim for our generation at least. But the point of that story was, I mean, it was a humbling story for me. That's what I intended to do. So, in future, the human civilization has colonized every single planet, every single star, sun, and black hole singularities are tourist destinations, and energy is produced by supernova, powering children's toys now. And that at that point of time, there's this. So one of the characters says this thing that we thought we became gods when we started folding space-time fabric like a piece of ancient silk. We thought we became gods when we confused thermodynamics and reversed entropy. Just to, I mean, just to establish that that's how advanced human civilization became. But then I mean, it's a spoiler for the story. But at the end, what happens was that I mean, one of the people believed that this message is basically some sort of an invitation from the creators, and now human civilization is advanced enough to leave their cradle, this cradle of humanity, and walk out of this universe and start creating with those who created us. But at the end of the story, it just says that intelligence life not found, purging data, and restarting simulation. And
Oh, nice.
the point of the
I thought
entire
the
story
message
was,
was, I would think of, sorry for cutting you short, but yeah, I mean, if there's a message which will be given to us at the last, when the creator comes next to you and stands in front of you and says, this is the recipe for the finest Scotch whiskey that you can make.
Very typical of you. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, my point was that a lot of times we feel like we've solved every question that is to be solved, and we've created all the things that are possibly conceived. And the point of the story was that we're perhaps just fish which swam too close to its glass tank and stared out for too long and thought that we've seen the entire universe. So the point was to inspire people to believe that there's a lot of questions yet to be unanswered, yet to be answered, and there are a lot of things to be done. Because as a child, I felt like, and this was a pretty stupid fear in retrospect, but a lot of children do feel like uh, science is coming to an end. There's not much. I mean,
That's a good question to carry on. Do you think science has an ending, or in the end, what would it be? The discovery of everything
In
would
the
be.
late 1890s, it was thought that everything that can be thought about and
yeah,
anything that can be worked in physics has come to an end. We've hit the wall, and nothing that can happen. And ta-da, Max Planck.
Yeah.
So yeah, every time you hit a wall, you find ways to think about it.
that's just how science works.
It does. It does.
And what do you think
It's
about
like this.
creator
What do I
theories?
think about the creator? Of course,
No, the create
I don't
theories
think
that
about.
creationalism.
I
Creationalism.
I don't
What do you
think
think about
I
it?
can think about the theory of creationism because I think I have better things to do with my time.
Agnostic coming right out. Okay. All
No,
right.
I love experimenting with alcohol. So I think I would rather do that than think about creationism.
Right.
Brilliant cocktails.
I feel like it's just more wonderful and fascinating of an idea to think of a universe without a creator, because if you think about it, there are all these jiggling atoms
Hmm.
and all these clouds of electrons coming together, and at
Hmm.
some level which we do not understand, these atoms realize that they're
I
atoms.
think that is what probabilistic cosmology is talking about, isn't it?
Yeah,
We don't require for probabilistic cosmology. We require the need for curator comes for the deterministic model of the universe. But
yeah.
then we have a house divided in the two people, in the two sides, right? The determinists and the probabilists.
I
So I
don't think
think,
that
and the probabilists
determinists.
are inviting the idea that the universe might not have a creator.
But I think even a deterministic view of the universe might exist without a creator, and I think it's an idea, like in the
But
sense
for the
that
probabilistic universe, I think it is more porous to that idea. It allows it
yeah,
to. Yeah, for
yeah,
determinists, you need something here and there.
yeah. I mean, just for the viewers who do not perhaps understand what a deterministic universe is, would you like to go over it in like a brief manner?
So, yeah, so I think I would suggest there's a book called Why Do We Exist? It's by Jim Holt, and I think people can do a little homework there.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, he sent that. Someone sent a message. Thoughts on confirmation bias dilemma and solipsism, if that's how you
Hmm.
pronounce it.
Hmm.
Okay.
No comments.
Really? Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay. So while we were still talking about about a deterministic universe, there is a lot of debate going on about whether or not free will exists.
Hmm.
And do you really feel that everything we are is just computable and therefore deterministic? And don't you think there is area for uncertainty or something a bit more than just physical laws conspiring and turning into consciousness? Or at least the question of consciousness, there's a bit of debate about how it could have.
All right. All right. So let's just try and understand how physical laws work, right? And then we can go to this question layer by layer. So physical laws work under a physical domain, right? And in physical reality, and when I say what physical reality is something where every element of physical reality corresponds to a physical law, right? Now, first we need to identify whether free will is physically real. If it is physically real, then it is part of the physical reality and it will correspond to a physical law. And if it is not physically real, then does it exist or not? Then it's a debatable question. So I think most of us have not been able to identify whether it can correspond to something which is physically verifiable. It's been an idea which from Socrates to Stoics to modernists to everybody have been thinking about, but nobody is able to put a domain on it. Now you can ask me whether it's now because it's free will, how can you put domain on it? And I would say for everything to exist, there has to be a boundary condition, even the universe. For whatever we speak, the boundary condition is our language. And languages fail us, right? Because they are defined under certain circumstances and they have their own. If language is a set, then it has certain elements. So I'm just trying to understand if free will is an element in a certain uh, set, what is that set? And if that set exists, then we can identify, all right, whether free will is physically real. Can we work out on free will? Under what domains that the free will works? Whether free will works or not? Then it's a huge debate which has longer questions to
But the
answer.
word you choose to say right now in the next second, do you think that truly comes out of choice because you have a billion options and you will say exactly the word that you will say? So do you think
I
that
think I think I think that's a question that psychologists can answer. not the
Yeah.
physicists. But yeah, because we don't know the nuances on how fast our subconscious works. And it certainly would help to understand how mind works when physicists should try, like, put some thought on it. And there are two people which I know of that worked really interestingly on mind and the consciousness. And I think one of them we really love, his name is Roger Penrose. Sorry, Sir Roger Penrose. And Stuart Hameroff. And I think there was some very interesting work that they've done. But when we come, and also they're trying to find physical basis of consciousness. So that is the kind of thing that I was talking about. If there is a conscious being which exists out there, and if you are a conscious being, then what is the domain of that conscious being? Where does that thing exist? Because one, we understand how physically real things work, right? If consciousness is physically real, then we need to identify what is the domain of that consciousness.
Yeah, I think it's still a debate. I don't think that anyone's come out with an answer to whether or not to
I think
basically answer the
asking
question.
questions is way better than answering them.
Yeah, I think that journey will
We
continue
need
for a
we
long
need
time.
good questions.
Yeah, that's pretty much the field of
Karthik, you just need
philosophy.
to stop playing with your phone.
There actually, I'm not playing with my phone. It's hard to keep it stable because, yeah, there are reasons. Um,
Okay, okay.
but I am personally a hardcore determinist. I mean, I personally believe that there is no such thing as free will, and I think the question of free will is perhaps plays its most important role in the question of legality and jurisprudence. Like, if I am not accountable, if it wasn't truly a choice, should I be held accountable? Should I be punished or rewarded for something which was already predetermined? And in my opinion, if so here's from a deterministic point of view, this is what I'll answer for the existence to warrant legitimacy to the existence of law and order. And the point is that if it is deterministic, and if the crime that I was supposed to commit has already been written somewhere, um,
Then no human action can be accountable for.
yeah, I mean that's definitely true. And more importantly, the existence that in that case the existence of law and order is already predetermined as well. Like, there's nothing you can do about the existence of jurisprudence and the development of jurisprudence either. So, but I mean, that's what I theoretically believe. I'm personally really active in terms of politics, and I do feel like pressuring governments and pressuring organizations can help influence their decisions, and that's what pragmatically I intend to adopt. But I do believe that if we had knowledge about every single atom and all forces acting on those atoms, then we'd be able to compute
Put a
what's going to
model
But I
on
happen.
it.
think chaos completely
Oh,
kind of
now
grounds that
Karthik,
theory,
I think
right?
Karthik
I
has
mean,
invited very interesting discussion here.
yeah, I mean, chaos just explores determinism and clearly finds that if you put these numbers together, there is still some intrinsic level of disorder and uncertainty that you cannot account
But that
for.
is, yeah, of course. I mean, are we forgetting Godel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sir, are we forgetting Godel? Are we forgetting the incompleteness of the entire mathematical enterprise, I would say, which tries to understand the universe?
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? I mean, Gödel's incompleteness theorem in itself, I mean,
It questions
yeah,
verifiability of the axiom, right?
yeah, but it questions its own existence as well. And I
Because
Of
don't,
that
course.
itself is an axiom. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So
no,
when everything is inherently incomplete,
that
then
means that Gödel's incompleteness theorem is also
theorem is
incomplete.
also incomplete. Yeah, so that
Yeah, so
puts
there
itself in
must
the domain,
exist
right?
something that is complete by
Yeah, so
definition.
then by definition, if nothing is complete, and just for argument's sake, then how can deterministic model of understanding knowledge can be complete? Even if
Yeah,
you have the knowledge of everything and everyone and whatever there is, can you seriously track how things would work? And the answer is yes, because when you have all the data, you can determine the path at which things go. And when I say data, you also have the data of the error. Otherwise, the question comes, all right, you have the data, but what would you do with the error? You also have the data of the error. But will you be able to, now we have all the data, you're putting the model, but will you be able to determine the actions of the element when it comes to execution?
Yeah, I think it again boils down to the question whether consciousness is a physical thing or not.
Yeah.
I mean, what we know we can confidently say that physical models can be predicted with infinite data, but
Yeah, yeah,
it does
yeah,
not
yeah,
bar the idea that consciousness is not a physical thing. So there's
yeah.
that.
But we do need to identify whether consciousness is a part of physical
But
reality
I
or
think
it's not.
chaos seriously questions your first statement about physical systems being completely deterministic. I think it takes very simple deterministic systems and finds immense, disorder within that. And then
Hmm,
again, order within the disorder. So
No,
chaos,
hmm,
chaos comes in question when you have an idea of precision. If precision is
hmm.
infinite, then there is no such thing as chaos. It's all calculated paths and
it's
trajectories of.
sensitive dependence on initial conditions, and that
Yeah,
when you
but if
say
your sensitivity is infinite,
initial,
Hmm.
okay,
Hmm.
yeah,
okay.
So that you need to understand that you can't win with Karthik.
But nor can Karthik against chaos. I think with infinite precision, chaos will still produce the disorderliness that is. For example,
see,
uncertainty.
Sidara,
Heisenberg's uncertainty
disorder.
principle. How do you club that with your theory of determinism?
Okay, first of all, I'd like to point out that disorder is order which we do not understand.
Hmm.
If you'd like to, I think that you'll agree with me over that at least. The disorder is just order that we cannot understand. Like for someone who does not understand English, Shakespeare is just gibberish. And for someone who does not understand the true nature of reality, chaos is just gibberish. So
Hmm.
there's that. And about so I'd like to quote one of a really famous quotes, and it's um, if an elderly and distinguished scientist says something is possible, then that is
Hmm.
possible. If an
Hmm.
elderly and distinguished scientist says something is impossible, that is also possible. And it comes from an Arthur Clarke's book. Uh, so Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, I think, is still um, nothing is written in stone, is what I feel in science, and that's the entire point. Like
Hmm.
we think that this is the statement that explains the nature of our reality
Hmm.
as of now,
Hmm.
but
But I
like
really do
determinism.
think of the pixelated universe where as you zoom in further and further, things get hazier and more
Hmm.
uncertain. And I think our universe seems to really, really portray the symptoms of this pixelated universe. And I
I
don't know,
think
I'm
the
not.
universe enjoys indeterminism. It likes
Yes.
ambiguity.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think there's
I
loads
think
of ambiguity.
humans enjoy indeterminism
I think
as
it's been
well.
200 years to turbulence, right? I don't think we've cracked turbulence yet. And like you said, maybe disorder is just order we don't understand.
It took
But
There's
200,000
so many
years to
things.
crack gravity. So
yeah,
the timescales are all
There's
messed
no
up.
limit to human knowledge, and I think it would certainly take a very interesting amount of time and human effort for us to understand how determinism works and if it works at all.
yeah.
Yeah,
Especially with respect to, I think, decisions made by sentient beings. I think we
Hmm.
have a long, long way to go in saying it's
I am
deterministic.
very sure that Karthik is going to
So
call me tonight and explain me his ideas.
we will have a separate call for that. But yeah. Someone asked, it'll be nice to hear you all talk about the ways science and art can be brought together for young adults, considering that the usual conditioning leads.
Who's answering that?
I
You.
you
We are
Well, for
interviewing you.
past 15 minutes, I thought I was the interviewer. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's very simple. You just need to find ways to understand sciences and then amalgamate with arts. But it's very simple. If you want to do theater, do Copenhagen. Then there's a play by Mohan Rakesh Einstein. You do that. Can you not do that? It's science, it's history, and it's acting.
Life of
Right?
Galileo.
Life of
Brave.
Galileo. Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful plays out there. Do it. And especially for young adults. And there are poems written on science. There's this one poem called The Problem of Dynamics by James Clerk Maxwell. It kills the inherent beauty of the poem, but it's a poem which talks about a problem in dynamics. For example, if you are giving word problems to a young adult, write a sonnet. It's a two-way street. We want somebody to, teach, but we don't want to take charge. It's as simple as that. If you're doing a painting class, ask people to draw galaxies. It's an amalgamation, isn't it? If you don't understand how galaxy looks like, when you know how galaxy looks like, you need to understand what the spiral is when you're painting it. And what do these colors mean when you're painting it, right? So you are teaching the structure of the galaxy by just asking somebody to paint one.
And coming to poetry, I think everyone knows Pranav to be obsessed with poetry, if that's the word. So can we have a recitation of anything, maybe in Urdu, but with a translation after that? It would be lovely to hear.
That was the primary reason why I was asking you to give me a little theme. Because I've been reading a lot of love poems and war poems lately, so I only remember them. Otherwise, I could have prepared
That's okay though. We don't have to stick to anything relevant. This whole conversation has been like all over the place. So just give us the war poem.
And there's a poem by Faiz Ahmed Faiz. It's on homelessness. And it talks about how it's on exile actually. It says, मेरे दिल मेरे मुसाफिर हुआ फिर से हुक्म सादिर के वतन बदर हूँ हम तुम दें गली गली सदाएं करें रुख नगर नगर का कि सुराग कोई पाएं किसी यारा नाम बर का हर एक अजनबी से पूछें जो पता था अपने घर का सरे कुएं नाशन आया हमें दिन से रात करना कभी इससे बात करना कभी उससे बात करना तुम्हें क्या कहूं कि क्या है शबे गम बुरी बला है हमें ये भी था गनीमत कि कोई शुमार होता हमें क्या बुरा था मरना अगर एक बार होता. And Karthik is going to translate this one.
Okay, yay. Yes, Karthik.
Oh no.
Oh no.
I mean, I honestly feel like I won't be able to do that. I mean, I'd rather translate it prose by prose.
Let's have a brief translation from either of you, just like the gist of the poem.
So Faiz is longing for the need for home, and he's remembering how he used to go and to his friends' places and talk day and night, how they used to enjoy. Now he's looking for that one person who remembers his name. And he's saying, in this long road of despair and longing, it would have been wonderful if I had at least just one person beside me.
Yeah, I think, and to truly appreciate this, I think some of you might need the context that Faiz also, apart from being a poet, he also served in war. So
he was a major. He was MBE.
Yeah,
MBE.
But this idea of the notion of home is also really interesting. So a very famous Brecht quote is "मैंने जूतों से ज़्यादा देश बदले हैं," because wherever he used to stay, he would trouble the authorities and he'd be exiled.
Yeah, there was this one time when him and Pablo Neruda was living together, and also Nazim Hikmet. And that was in Turkey, right? When Pablo Neruda was exiled from his country, he went to Italy. And Nazim Hikmet was in Turkey at that time, and Faiz was in Turkey in exile. And so Pablo Neruda came to Turkey. And there's a very interesting photo of Pablo Neruda and Faiz on some Turkish beach.
Okay.
Someplace in Turkey. I don't know where it is, but it is there.
I am sure our audience is lost right now. Okay. Um, let's talk about history of science a bit, and I guess interpretations by authors who are science writers but not scientists. And often scientists themselves claim, hey, I mean, you guys talk about the philosophy of science, but as a scientist, we are more capable of interpreting that. But personally, I feel that's dumb, and I think interpreting
It's a
science
struggle for authority, and that's it.
yeah, and I think science communicators and science writers are doing a wonderful job, right?
I
So
think people like Chris Meek have done
James
better
Clear
work.
as well. Hmm.
Chris Meek has done greater work in philosophy of science than any physicist that I know of. I mean, he's a philosopher of cosmology. And his work in philosophy of cosmology is way better and far-reaching than Steven Weinberg himself. And this is a verifiable statement, by the way.
Yeah, there is a column which disses on Steven Weinberg periodically because I guess he just attempts philosophical writing. But yeah, we need to admit
He
that there
attempts
are
philosophical writing, and I think it's cute
it's
to
cute,
read what he says. It's very cute.
right?
Like
Yeah,
he's this
so
old man who's trying to do something new,
yeah.
Like this grandfather who was trying to understand Facebook.
And that brings out the point of training such that it's not too narrow, right? Like education that doesn't mold the brain into a single narrow-minded one-directional thing. So I think being able to think about philosophy and
I
questions
think before attempting before solving the physical idea, I think it'd be a great idea. I think it'd be a great exercise rather to philosophize the idea first and understand and spend time with it. Most of the time, what we do is we take a problem statement, we take mathematical tools, and we run after the life of that idea, and we just make sure that it's dead. We don't have to solve an idea. We need to understand the idea first, and then spend time with it. And I usually tell my students, when you have a physical problem, date the physical problem for some time before getting married to it.
yeah, I think the practice of contemplation is just fading away, like
Yeah.
especially among the more technical circles. It's just
And
spending hours. Yeah.
I mean, I also used to think about this problem a lot, and the way I used to think about it is this dwindling of cognitive endurance. So
Exactly.
cognitive endurance in the sense that now information is so easily accessible. So the idea is that when you're in school, the questions that you're given to that are given to you, they have a solution existing somewhere in the world. And what you do is you struggle with the problem for a while, and when you can't solve it, because there's an incentive to solve the problem, you go find the solution instead of actually understanding the problem.
Understanding
And
the
that
problem.
doesn't
And
really happen in
there's
real
this
world.
person, Frank Schwartz, if I'm not wrong. He wrote a book called The History of the Word Problem in Mathematics. And it's very interesting to understand when problem statements came, and they were all very political initially. They were trying to understand economics and money and power and physical principles. And that was the birth of the word problem, because they wanted solutions which were not able, we were not able to, the commoners were not able to understand in a mathematical context. So you're right, when you put a problem statement and you put an incentive on it, that has been a practice for a really long time, and that has become what you say, an acceptable practice, right? And you don't change the norm usually, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole Google the answer immediately when you get a question thing. I was talking about this to someone recently, but yeah, like being able to play with the question for a while and feeling like you've discovered some idea on your own or derived something on your own is such an amazing feeling. And right now we have instant gratification for those solutions.
In fact, there's this, I mean, the way we use riddle, the way we say that's just, this is so riddling, or this is a mystery. I mean, riddles are problems that are supposed to be recreational, that are supposed to be fun to solve. not as a, but now it's said with a negative undertone because people just don't want to like play around with the problem. So, but I
So
think
if
that's a problem which has an easy fix. It's not something that's going to affect generations of human civilization.
hopefully. So we are going to go into like rapid fire round now. So let's speed it up a bit. You're on mute, Pranav.
Rapid fire, seriously?
Yeah. Meanwhile, Karthik, I want you to come up with questions rapidly so that when I end, you can take over. Okay. Let's see. Favorite scientist and why?
Favorite scientist and why? Richard Feynman. Because he was Richard Feynman, of course.
Okay. Most inspiring thing about science for you personally?
It allows me to question unconditionally.
Craziest thing that you actually believe in?
Craziest thing that I actually believe in. I think I answered that question
I
earlier.
did not. Okay, what is it?
The craziest thing that I actually believe in is that poetry can solve everything. Poetry is the cure for everything.
That is a bit crazy. Okay. Do you really think free will is a thing? We already, but yeah, can you give us an answer?
I think I do, and I think I don't.
Okay. Okay, why do you invite people to your house all the time?
Why? What kind of question is that? What kind of question is that?
Answer
Why do I
it.
invite people to my house all the time? Because I like having discussions, and it's good to have discussions in my drawing room because it's well lit. Two, it has
Oh, it's well lit for
a
sure.
lot of books,
Okay.
and it has and it allows people to relax a bit.
That's
And I
nice.
like having long discussions, so I mean I don't want to disturb restaurants.
It's very generous of you. You invite all of us home. Okay.
That was a good party, come on.
That was a good party. Okay, now sing us a song that's kind of been stuck in your head. I'll give you 40 seconds to sing the song.
See, I don't sing.
Give us the wild,
Can I
wild.
pass? Can I?
No, please. I think you do sing.
I think I've been singing these Punjabi tappes off late, and because they're like
Okay, go.
very humorous.
Okay.
One they're very humorous, and then there's certain kick that I get out of it. Yeah.
Go.
Do you want to hear that?
Yeah, we're waiting.
All right. So, ਕੀ ਲੈਣਾ ਏ ਮਿੱਤਰਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਕੀ ਲੈਣਾ ਏ ਮਿੱਤਰਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਮਿਲਣ ਤੇ ਆ ਜਾਵਾਂ ਡਰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ ਛਿੱਤਰਾਂ ਤੋਂ. So there's this guy singing for this girl. You ask me to come and meet you. That's fine, but I really like. I would not appreciate if somebody hits me with a sandal.
That is such a legitimate concern.
Then that's
Good
it.
at singing. Okay,
Yeah.
name another hidden talent of yours.
Hidden talent of mine,
Yeah.
which people don't know. I think people. I mean, you guys know what I do. Like
Okay. Okay. So no hidden talents.
something that I don't want to talk about. That's a
Okay. We are not going there. If you had to name a quark, what would you name it?
If I had to name a quark,
And Karthik picked this because you're both charming and strange. Charming. What would?
Karthik, you're not getting points out of it, by the way.
Pranav,
If you're
Pranav is
thinking
flattered.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would rather like to call a quark duck. Yeah.
Okay. A duck quark, a new duck quark. How did you survive Delhi summers?
I love that city. I can survive anywhere if I'm. I can survive if I'm in love with the city.
Do you like mangoes?
Who doesn't?
Do you carry a wallet?
What? Yes, I do sometimes, only to lose it here and there.
Okay. What is my recent TV show that you binge watched, and now we have two Kartiks. Nice.
Recent TV show that I binged watched. Yeah, Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister.
Okay, not heard of
Mhm.
them. But
It's a
over
British
to
series. It's a British
oh,
series. Wonderful.
okay.
Yeah.
Karthik, any questions? Rapid fire.
Yeah, if you had to name a planet, what would you name a planet?
If I have to name a planet, what would I call it? I think I'd
Eh?
call it something very strange. I can
Oh
call that
yeah.
planet Delhi. Why not? I love that city.
Okay.
I'm going to Delhi, guys, and then we go. Okay.
Okay, if you were to start a civilization on an island, would you rather be a dictator or would you hold a election?
Of course, I'll hold an election
Do you
and
have trust
micromanage
in
it
people?
somehow.
Okay, that's interesting.
Went with
Um,
democracy. Okay.
I mean, people should know that there's democracy.
okay, 20 years later, what book do you think you would be writing?
20 years later, what book I would be writing? I think Flirting Manners for Teenagers.
Ah,
Unbelievable. Okay. Did you ever
contributing to the society in all ways you can.
always? Did you ever consider going off to the forest and turning into like a sannyasi as a teenager, perhaps?
Yeah, and I used to do that more often. We have this place outside where I was born and raised in Agra. So and that's a family property. So it's a small house, and it has no civilization in about 10 kilometers square. So I used to go there, live, read without a phone, no internet, there's no connection. So I still
Nice.
do off and on. I mean, of course, I can't do it for a long time, but I do it for like a couple of days when I visit Agra.
What do you consider as your biggest achievement, personally?
I think surviving. I'm 27. I've survived 27 years on
You
this
made
planet. Come on.
it. Oh, I don't know if I announced
Yeah,
it.
look at that.
Pranav Sharma was Asia's youngest science museum curator, if I'm not
So,
mentioning it before. Yeah, so just wanted to put it out there. 27, guys. Okay.
so
Just adding it in there. So survival. Karthik, what do you consider as your biggest achievement so far?
Oh no, I don't. I think I'd rather not have a. Oh God, this is such a hard question.
Yeah, think about it. I'll give you 3
yeah,
more
you were
minutes.
asking me these hard questions, right? I can ask you these hard
Yeah.
questions.
Meanwhile, someone asks, if time allows, would like you all to give your opinions on quantum cognition. Quantum cognition.
I think we can do a separate talk on it. I think that'll be a better idea because it'll
Yeah,
justify the topic. What do you what do you guys think?
yeah.
Yeah,
we can
and I
do it
think I
again,
would
man.
love to go over
And
I think
perhaps
it's-
next time we can have a theme-based interaction.
Let's do
Yeah.
that. Let's do that. And I think going over some of the work by Roger Penrose would be a great idea. For
I
the
think so.
topic.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think we can start with cycles of time and Emperor's Mind and New Emperor's Mind. I think that will be a good idea to do.
But there is something coming out right now, an entire breed of intellectuals who talk about quantum activism as such, who connect the inferences made by quantum mechanics, and they connect it to consciousness, and they state that, and they connect it to Vedic sciences. So there is.
I think I'm not aware of that, Siddhara, but I would really appreciate if you can send me a couple of readings.
I will, and there are scientists
There's-
who turned
It's,
into quantum activists. Yeah.
If someone's interested, there's this book called The Fifth Science. It's by Exerbia, and it basically explores this theme. So humanity discovers the science of consciousness as well. So you can make metals which are conscious, which are aware of their existence. And it's a pretty cool book. It explores what if you can create consciousness, not in humanoids, but in anything you want. A
Well,
conscious stone.
I would not like the walls of my house being conscious because that will cause a really interesting problems.
But yeah, I would.
The walls
like
are always
I mentioned
listening.
now, this
That's
theory
the
called
problem. That is why I don't want them to be conscious.
Yeah, there's this theory called panpsychism, which explores this, and it says sentience is not an evolutionary advantage, so why is it still there? Like Karthik can go about his daily chores and do everything he's doing, even if he was a robot, which is not per se conscious. So if it was not an evolutionary advantage, then why are we conscious? So that leads to
But
the
I mean, don't you think this is the reverse way to look at it? Um, you are sentient, and that's why you look for evolutionary advantages, not that you wanted evolutionary advantages and you have some sort of consciousness.
no, but evolutionary advantages determine the traits and the properties that these organisms get, right, as they
No,
move along.
what I mean is, so life is basically a competition against entropy, right? You're trying to maintain order,
Yeah.
and evolutionary advantage is whatever helps you in maintaining that order. And if you think
If
about consciousness as the force that tries to keep that order, tries to make sure that you're not an amorphous cloud of atoms and you're this one intricate dynamic person, then I think it's the reverse way to look at it. That sentience is not an evolutionary advantage, maybe, but evolutionary advantages come before. I mean, sentience comes before the idea of evolutionary advantage even arises.
perhaps,
How about
but
let's talk about balance, right? We talk about balance. So I think the balance that the evolution is trying to strike against entropy is very dynamic, right? Karthik, would you agree?
Yeah,
Yeah, and it goes up, it goes down, but it's certainly trying to establish a balance which is very dynamic in nature. It goes like this, and in doing so, that I think is the evolutionary advantage, that you are able to survive the dynamic situation, where if you have defined constructs, especially mechanized in that sense, and coded, if you're looking at an artificially intelligent thing, then I think that dynamic balance would be something which would take a really long time for the machines to understand.
yeah,
Because there's something called genetic memory, right? I think we can all agree to that.
yeah.
Yeah?
And in
And you
but
general,
cannot
like,
put all of that genetic and civilizational memory and put it in a robot and then expect him to behave the way you do.
yeah,
I'm not
and
denying the possibility of doing so. I'm just saying it's a challenge.
definitely. In fact, like the idea that there are more synapses in our brain than stars in the galaxy, it's
Hmm.
crazy thing that we'd be able to compute and recreate a human brain anytime soon.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's that for
yeah, you
Terminator.
guys are talking about consciousness then as an emergent phenomenon, a consequence of the fact that life is even possible. So panspermia, sorry, not panspermia, panpsychism talks
Eh,
about the other aspect of it. It says perhaps um, every atom or intrinsic nature of matter is consciousness, and the fact that we feel we are conscious is just a consequence that we are one entity. But because it's not an evolutionary advantage, maybe it is a inherent property of matter or reality itself. So what if consciousness is
So
I think
how
that's a
about
really far
hmm. Yeah,
that's a big
finish, Karthik.
conjecture because yeah,
yeah,
if you think about it, sleep is not an evolutionary advantage, especially sleep
but it's no,
requiring sleep for 8
it's
hours. In this, I mean, think about it this way: you shut down, you're susceptible to all kinds of attacks. You're basically startled, and you're not in your senses for a while after you wake up. And all you need sleep for is 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 to take rest, which a lot of animals can take rest without sleeping. But this idea that all mammals sleep, I mean, sharks cannot even survive if they're not swimming for their entire life. They'll die because they won't be able to respirate. So the idea that something is not an evolutionary advantage and that's why it must be an intrinsic nature of matter, that's a big leap
Great.
in logic.
Great. Now hold on, guys. All right. Even I'm the guy who's being interviewed. I think I would take the place of the host, and I would like you to summarize.
okay. Summarize what? No, I will say that. Okay, all right, all right. So let's conclude and let's Pranav Sharma, please summarize your your approach to science or what you
So my
generally think.
approach to science is very porous, and I think science should be done in the most open fashion possible. Even if there are ideas which you disagree with, you should give an opportunity to listen to those ideas and even sometimes work it out to understand whether you have a bias, because most of us do have a bias. And science, the way you're doing science should be exemplified in the way you live, right? If you believe in liberalism, you should live like a liberal, right? And if you believe in having a scientific outlook, if you believe that pseudoscience is what's the right word, killing the true essence of civilization, then you should do everything in your power to, what's the right word for it, propagate the ideas of sound scientific notion and scientific outlook. And I think that would certainly, if not solve any problem, then at least it will raise questions on the status quo.
And I think, like Richard Feynman says, do science, pick it up. If it's if you're something you're passionate about, then do science in the most haphazard way possible.
Absolutely.
And I think he talks about playing with it. So with that, I think we can conclude. Thanks a lot to both of you, Pranav Sharma, for taking your time and coming on board to our talk. And
I always love that. Yeah.
Sure, and I
guys,
think next
please
time,
listen to my podcast, which Sitara did in February.
Yes, so this is episode 2. So you can listen to episode 1 at the Physics Milkshake, and if you just Google Physics Milkshake, you'll find the podcast. So please listen to a stroll through time and
Don't
space.
judge me, please.
Yeah, I think he was mildly. Yeah, anyway, he never hated. Okay.
And nobody's going to disclose why and how was that recorded.
Yeah. And I think we should do this more and come out with important themes and important topics that needs to be heard, that needs to be spoken about.
In this interaction, we've been talking a lot about consciousness, and I think it would be a good idea if we can do something to understand consciousness in the next session.
Yeah, that would be great. And I think we can read up and come out with specific things that people have already done and then discuss it. So that would be good as well.
I have a friend who's a philosopher of consciousness. I think I can ask him if he'd be interested.
Yeah, that would be great if you could join us.
Yep.
And to end with, I would just like to say a couple of words about Naxxatra. So we are doing a lot to, as Pranav mentioned before, to provide parallel alternatives to students, right? So this is a place where you can come and get connected to mentors and PhD level students and researchers. So we have crash courses. Everything is happening in the form of virtual classrooms, which makes it extremely useful at this point of time. And we have project teams and a lot of announcements lately, like our project got accepted, paper got accepted by the International Astronautical Congress. A lot of them have co-authored a publication by Einstein Pi. So we've been doing a lot in a collaborative sense, which means it doesn't matter where you come from and which institution you are. We will try our best to give you the resources required. So that's the whole point. And you can check us out at www.naxxatra.com. Please subscribe and like and subscribe the channel so that you get more of our lectures here. All of our online resources are going to be out on YouTube. So please subscribe. And with that, we'll end. Thanks again, both of you. It's been fun.
Bye.
Again in a week.
Talk soon.